Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to see so many of you turn out to hear me kind of share my evolving practice in this area. So my name's Anne-Marie Langford. I'm a learning development tutor at the University of Northampton, and although I work with students across the university, the university has a liaison link with specific subjects, and I'm the liaison link for nursing, occupational therapy, dental nursing, and psychology. So a lot of kind of healthcare disciplines in that mix there. So the way that learning development works at the University of Northampton, we have embedded sessions with one-to-one tutorials. We've started doing these bookable sessions now, so students can opt in to have additional content, and we have very quick drop-ins. So that's just to give you an idea of the kind of general scope of my work. So when I talk about using AI errors, I'm mainly talking about using it in my work in embedded sessions when I go and do group sessions in specific courses. So my background is I spent a fair amount of time starting my career teaching English as a foreign language. And from that, I went into heritage education. I worked in a lot of different museums, archives, and before I joined HE, I was at the National Museum of Computing, which is situated on Bletchley Park. Hence the link to, you might recognise this machine if you watch The Imitation Game. This is a Turing Welshman bomb rebuild. So they used the bomb to hack Enigma cipher codes. And obviously Alan Turing is famous for being the granddaddy of artificial intelligence. So my interest in AI sort of stems from there, and I actually, when I worked there as the learning manager, actually taught sessions on how to build chatbots with GCSE and A-level students. So in terms of error correction, when I look at error correction with students, the reason why I do it is because I'm hoping to instill in students a sense that writing is a process and it's a learning process. And I think oftentimes students get really focused on the output, so they want to write an assignment that's going to get them a good mark. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is also a sense of kind of giving students permission to get things wrong and evolve their thinking and evolve their writing. So I was trying to think of how I landed on this idea of using errors. I think it's quite common, and a lot of my colleagues will give students good examples and say, here is what good academic writing looks like. And I don't suspect I'm unique, but I'm probably a little bit of a renegade in that what I will do is I will give students examples of ineffective academic writing and say, this writing is ineffective. Can you tell me why? Can you make it better? So, and I was trying to figure out what the kind of theoretical basis for this was. And I sort of cast in my mind back to when I did my TEFL course, and I vaguely remember something about error correction. I just could not find the academic basis for it. But I did land on this Bartholomew, who talks about writing as a process and writing efficacy. And this idea of an evolving self-perception as writers. So often learning developers will have students coming to them saying, oh, I'm not good at academic writing, I'm not a writer. And so you're like, well, if you write, you're a writer. Everyone's a writer. And the other thing, reason why I kind of embrace this idea of error correction is a kind of encourage an investigative approach to writing. So, rather than saying, here are some common problems with writing, to actually see if students can identify them themselves and rectify them themselves. And this kind of mirrors the editing process that you go through when you write as well, but you're doing it in a kind of way. Where did we get to? We've got from not having time to do it as a peer exercise, which is well established in academic literature, to me writing it for the students, to me saying, I haven't got time to write it, so I'll get AI to write it for me. So we started out really as a kind of time-saving exercise. But I found that there are other interesting things that happen when you use AI-generated writing with students. And, we'll explore that more in a minute. Am I still there? So in my reading, um, somebody came up with a lovely analogy of a generative AI being basically a sophisticated parrot. And I love that idea. Basically, you put words into this machine and words come out, and the machine doesn't understand what those words are. It just comes up with the most popular or probable response. So I love the idea of, who's a pretty boy then? Generative AI being like that. So that's the idea that I'm kind of playing with. So I've got 3 examples here of where I've used generative AI. And the first example was quite early on. I think I did it about 2 years ago. I used ChatGPT, and the experiences that I had doing that have informed the examples that I'm going to give you second and third. So you'll see that, there was a little kind of development in my practice as well.
Right. Okay. So the first thing that I did actually was I created a role play script. I was asked to do some work on some role plays with some master's students in counselling. So I asked ChatGPT to generate 3 role-playing scripts for 3 different therapeutic modalities. And this is the actual slide that I use with the students. So I was really upfront with them, and I went, I've created 3 different scripts. They're created by ChatGPT, so they're not going to be perfect. And I outlined some of the issues that there might be. And so I said, look, it's not going to be very subtle. It's not going to be very nuanced. Humans are unpredictable, etc., etc. So I gave the students the scripts and I asked them to think about what, if anything, that they would change, what problems there were with the script. So I gave them 4 questions. How do the scripts meet the learning objectives? What might you change as a therapist? Why and how? Or would you change as a therapist? Why and how? What other responses might the young person make? So they're considering other alternatives. This must have been a children's counselling one. And what other responses might therapists need to make? So I was getting them to try and kind of use it as a jumping off point for a discussion. And what I found when I used the scripts actually, and it was a really interesting observation that the students made, they said that they felt freer to critique the outputs, as in the role plays, knowing that a human being hadn't written them. They were worried about being unkind to someone's work. And if a computer had written it, it didn't matter. They weren't going to hurt anyone's feelings. So that was really nice. They noted that the scripts tended to use the buzzwords without really applying the principles. And that is to be expected because Gen AI is a parrot, right? And the scripts offered them a framework for further development, and it did create debate amongst the groups. However, some of the students found it difficult to verbalize how the scripts were wrong, what the problems were. And the responses really varied between the groups. So some groups were like, I know it's wrong, I just can't put it into words, whereas other groups were like, well, there's this thing, there's that thing, there's the other thing, confidence thing and a knowledge thing. And so because of that, what I have done is actually put in frameworks for error correction so that students know what to look out for. So in the next 2 examples, in the next example, I've asked Gen AI to write me something with some deliberate mistakes in it. I asked this time Copilot because our university not recommends but suggests that Copilot is used by students because the idea is that the information stays within the institution. I know there's evidence that that's not, watertight, but that's kind of what we're going with. So when I model AI use, I use that. So I asked Gen AI to create a nursing reflection written by a nursing student that has, and there's a topic checklist that learning developers use. So I ask it to break the rules of that topic checklist, use contractions, emotive language, be vague, use I, and be opinionated. And the idea here is I'm creating controlled practice of linguistic conventions to promote self-efficacy, so that they're going, oh, I found these errors and I can correct them. Aren't I brilliant? I am an academic writer after all. But also to give them a framework for proofreading proofreading, so controlled practice of proofreading. So the idea is that they would use this topic checklist on their own work as well. And also modeling the idea that you can start with imperfect text and develop your ideas, because I think often students put pressure on themselves to write something brilliant first off. So it's modeling. It doesn't have to be great. You can take something that's a bit shoddy and develop it. So here's our old friend, the topic checklist. So I taught the students through the topic checklist, and this is the slide that I use, and I spend a little moment nostalging about topics for people in the UK. For those of you who don't know what I'm on about, it's a chocolate bar, but it was axed in during lockdown. They stopped making them because people weren't eating enough of them. Sad times. Anyway. So here's an example that was created by Copilot, and I've asked it to break the rules. And what I do is I ask the students to find the problems. At level 4, we go through sentence by sentence, trying to find it. Level 5, we take a kind of a whole chunk approach, because the idea is they're just really revising it. So we look at the errors and we try to find them. So that's that one. The next example, really my final example, is part of a session where I'm actually talking to students about their kind of the ethics and the uses of generative AI in their work. So I spend a good kind of 20 minutes trying to get them embedded in ethics, and we talk about all sorts of things there. And then this comes at the end. This is like the kind of what they've come for. But once they've gone through all the stuff about ethics, I talk to them a bit about prompt engineering, but I also talk to them about what kind of outputs they will get from using generative AI. So with this, what I do is I actually say to them, prompt Gen AI, ask them to write a thing, ask it to write a thing for you. So they prompt Gen AI, and it gives them a thing. I then give them, and this is something that I think learning developers will be really au fait with. I've color coded it just to help me, my brain, in vaguely as traffic lights. So I give this to them, and then I say, right, can you find any instances of that writing being opinionated, descriptive, critical, analytical? And usually the pieces that they generate are largely descriptive. And then we talk a little bit about what that means in terms of how they're marked, etc., etc. And then we might talk about how we might change that so that the information's being applied in a way that's relevant to their learning outcomes, that they're making links, that maybe they could use that text as a jumping off point into something else. And, you know, I really kind of try and drive home the point that really the marks are in the green column rather than the orange column. So it's really important to kind of make those links. So from that first example of where I used a role model and I just gave them the text and went, what do you think about it? I'm providing a framework in the second example, the topic framework for them to check their work. And in this example, an adaptation of Cottrell's types of writing table. So I give them that, they analyze the work, we have a really good discussion about how the writing tends to be descriptive. And then we also talk about prompt engineering. So thinking about how to write an effective prompt, because sometimes we'll look at the prompts and we'll go, oh, you know, the prompts might give you, if you're asking about climate change, it might just give you a very general overview, but actually if you look, your learning outcomes are about the impact of climate change on the supply chain, or you know, whatever it is, it might be more specific than that. So have a think about, and here are some things that I got from a paper that I read yonks ago by Mollick and Mollick, and here are some things that they suggested to think about when you are writing your prompts. So we go from here's a vague prompt to how could you write a better prompt, and here's how I kind of break it down for them so that they can see it. So that's it from me. I think that there's some examples of my practice. I've done all right, haven't I, given that we had a bit of a late start and everything.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the most kept to time I think we've ever had. So thank
Oh
you.
wow, go me. So I'll just zoom back to the beginning then. Click, click, click. And yeah, thoughts, observations, questions.